Hello, and welcome to this live stream on the FRENS Validator YouTube channel. Before we really kickstart this conversation, please also let us know if the sound works. If there are any problems, let us know in the chat. And with that being said, today we will talk about Evmos, we will talk about validator-specific airdrops and centralization. But before that, I want to introduce you guys to my guests. First of all, Federico, Kunze-Küllmer from Evmos, Jacob, Gadikian from Notional Labs, and of course, the Orbital Apes crew. Hello, guys.
Hey.
Hey, thanks for the invite.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine. And before we really dive deeper into the conversation, Federico, I think you also followed this discussion about decentralization on Evmos very closely these days. The critique was that initiatives like validator-specific airdrops are not very good for decentralization. So could you share your thoughts with us here, how you followed this discussion and how you generally feel about this topic?
Yeah, I mean, it has been an interesting conversation, I think, in general, because so when I first started in Cosmos, I was part of these the first UI team. I was a full stack engineer doing Voyager, that then was rebranded to Looney. Was the first UI in the Cosmos ecosystem, and we saw the exact same problems that we're seeing today, like where some of the validators, early Tendermint employees, and others that had the experience running all this infrastructure were accumulating more and more delegations. And there was like nothing that you could do like on a protocol level, because like, you know, they took like 2 years to build the staking logic, and now it's like, oh, but we're centralizing all this stuff. So I guess like from a user point of view, there are like multiple user experience and like sociological things that need to be implemented, not only on the protocol level, but also on the product level, like where you see the delegators, where the delegators see the validators. So a lot of these things need to be like approached from both like a product point of view and also from a protocol point of view. But and it's nice to see that now the validators are directly engaging with their users, and I think that this is like the positive outcome here. Even though like no matter of where the discussion is going, like I don't know, Jacob has been like running critical infrastructure for all these different networks and like running relayers. Orbital Apes have been like, besides the NFT project and like the OIV token that is basically what's up for discussion now, they have been contributing a lot to the Evmos ecosystem, and I'm really happy with the work they're doing. So like the thing is like, how do we also provide this information? Like how do we let all these users know that Jacob is running amazing relayers for the entire Cosmos ecosystem? And I think that's up to the table here. Like how do we increase the visibility of all these different contributions that every single validator is doing?
Yeah, we will dive deeper into this in a minute, but just to clarify this, so what you just said is that this is not a new topic generally. So we experienced this already.
Yeah, so exactly. So imagine you as a user and trying to stake your tokens, and you see that every single validator has the same commission. Say like every single validator has 5%. Usually where you go, like, and this is like name ordering, it's like a user experience thing where you go to the first validator because it's a top, right? Like, and you won't go to the bottom of the list and like go to the last page and like delegate. It's the same as when you go on Amazon or any marketplace and you like check their reviews, how many, or like you want to check a restaurant and check their reviews first. So it's like, it's this same user experience that we're facing right now. Problem, like where like we need to increase the visibility for all these different validators and their contributions, and we need to change this also from a point of view of the user, how the user sees each of the validators, how they engage with all the validators. So yeah, it's an effort of user experience, and it's an effort for decentralization in the protocol level, like from the foundation, etc. So yeah.
Yeah, we will talk more about this also in a minute, but you mentioned Jacob's work in the interchain. Jacob, could you tell us more about that, what you have been doing so far in the interchain, and also how you followed this discussion?
Sure. All right, to be as brief as possible, basically Osmosis launched, and because IBC would sometimes malfunction like massively in the early days, I noticed that there was a need for more relaying capacity, and I learned how to do it. Our original efforts were really, really successful. We ended up moving more than half of the IBC packets in total. But they actually weren't all that safe. Like we've actually matured our techniques a great deal. But then the techniques that we applied to relaying, we later learned that they also applied to like providing our PCs, for example. And that's been more recent, only maybe the past 6 months have we looked into the entire topic of like RPC provision and stuff. But basically, hey, I'm Jacob, and I started Notional. We've now got a team of 15, and mostly our focus is validation, relaying, RPCs, and software development. And we more or less blend these things. That's kind of our strength. So that's sort of like the thing that we want to bring to Cosmos is the blend of being able to contribute to the chains that we validate, and then also being able to provide infrastructure for those chains.
So now that we understood what you, Jacob, do in the interchain, I also want to hand over the word to Orbital Apes. So if one of you want to explain briefly what you guys are up to, what you guys are building, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so I can give a quick introduction to the project. So we're in the core an NFT collection, but we decided to go a further step and apply a lot of utility to it. So by now we have built an ecosystem within Evmos. We run the largest NFT marketplace, we run a top validator in the chain, and we have the main NFT collection. So the way we tied all of this is pretty much the NFT is what gives you access to the rest of our projects. So, for example, an Orbital Ape holder will get 20% of the trading fees of the marketplace, and it will also get a share of 50% of the profits from the validator. So we created this sort of reward system for our holders, which could be considered investors in the project, and we try to bring them the most utility possible. So we have built a great community, a great brand. We have a lot of people supporting us, which is why we're receiving so much attention. And we want to keep building on this chain. Like this has become our home, so we want to take care of it. And building is what we do, so it's how we reach this point.
Yeah, that's super cool. And Jacob, I see you started to unmute yourself. And the next question is also actually for you, because
Sure.
now that Orbital Apes started this conversation, so you were like a critic of kind of this initiative with, for example, that a validator does airdrops and starts to hand out NFTs. So could you maybe elaborate what the problem is here for you?
I can, but actually, one thing that I need to say is that after reading what Orbital Apes had to say, they ended up further in the gray zone than I ever expected. As I understand it, and please, Orbital Apes, correct me if I get anything wrong, okay? Basically, the way to earn a share of their validator income is to actually purchase Orbital Apes. And your delegators, they earn the OAV token, and the OAV token is used on the NFT marketplace. And is that a correct way to look at it?
Yes, exactly. So for access to any of the rewards we generate from the validator or from the marketplace, people have to mint one of the Orbital Apes from the main collection. So they have to make a payment of 60 Evmos, and that gives them access to to the project. So it's an investment for them. They get their ape and they're entitled to all of this. The OAV token is a bit different. It's our way to reward loyalty for people that stake with us in the validator. So the goal of this token is for them to further engage with our brand. So OAV is a token which can only be used in the OAV store. This store has similar art to what the Orbital Apes collection has, but none, and we sell NFTs in there, but none of these NFTs have any utility, so they're purely collectibles. Because our community loves to express themselves in different ways, so some of these Orbital Apes are themed, like for example the Rect Ape, which has a McDonald's hat, and things like that, that give people a better way to express themselves. But none of this has utility. So what people are getting as a reward for staking with us is just a collectible. And that's the OAV token. So we pretty much want to compare it to loyalty reward points from any other store. For example, if you're buying a lot in one brand, you get loyalty points in that brand, and you can use those points to buy more products from the same brand. So it's pretty much the same concept. But it is an ERC20 token, so of course it's permissionless, and the community can give it any value they want. It's not the intended use, but we're also not policing what people do with what they received from us. But we clearly...
Is it okay if I walk through how I do every governance decision? Myself and a co-founder, Ricardo, we had to make a decision on how to handle governance, and because like we basically do that together, and the way that we do it, we look at every gov prop that ever passed on the chain. We consider that to be law. After that, there's the chain code, and after that, there's the Cosmos SDK. And if we combine those things all together, we consider that to be like the effective law of any blockchain. So the first thing I want to say, my read, you don't actually violate any of the rules. There is that minimum commission on Evmos, and we could say that the OAV token potentially violates it, but in my opinion, we would actually need to make additional rules to change that. I think that in the current state of affairs, you're following the rules, but you're living in the gray, but blockchains kind of live in the gray. Federico, I see you're unmuted. I'll let you jump in.
No, so kind of like I see the OAV token as like a precursor, or like state, like shared state. Imagine like if the OAV token like eventually migrates to like a liquid staking token, like it's like a branded token for like the delegation to, and I think like eventually we'll like all the proof of stake networks in the Cosmos ecosystem will migrate to liquid staking. How the OAV token plays with this future model, where we increase the utility for the staking token by making it liquid and thus available in the Evmos DeFi and the interchain ecosystem too. There are chains in the ecosystem that their whole value proposition is around liquid staking. So in the sense of like the token itself, I don't think it's the problem itself here. It's like, I think what you're saying, Jacob, is like coming to consensus of what are the good governance practices, or like here, like I want to assume good faith in every single action from the validators in the ecosystem. And when there's no good faith, for example, when what happened in the Osmosis ecosystem, like then there's like actual proof, right? But I assume like the intent from the Orbital Apes team is just like increase awareness of their brand and increase awareness of the marketplace on their NFTs.
And I actually agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a very good keyword here, because before we dive deeper into this topic, because that's also like one of the main topics of today's live stream. I want to talk about the general issue. So for someone who's like completely new to Evmos, who's new to staking, the problem with voting power and decentralization. So Federico, could you maybe give us like an update on how decentralized Evmos is at this current stage compared to other Cosmos chains, and how urgent do you see this threat that many people assume that due to initiatives like these, that Evmos becomes more and more centralized? So could you give us an overview here?
Yeah, so we've been analyzing like validators and fairness and validator centralization, and well, Evmos percentage in the top 3 is around 25%. There is definitely a lot that we can do there, but and like it's like a little bit more centralized than other networks in the ecosystem. But overall, if you look at the top 25 or top 10, it's like pretty much a similar rate. The thing is like, how can we achieve both security and decentralization? Because like there has been a lot of discussion about like, oh, like how can we make the network more centralized? But we know that necessarily, and Jacob, you probably agree with me, is like some validators are not more secure, and having everyone have like, if we have 100 validators, or in our case 150, and if everyone shares the same voting power, the network is not going to be more secure than before. So like, how can we reach like these like middle ground where we can have decentralization and security in the network? Because that's kind of like the validator mandate, is like to be highly available, to not double sign, to not get jailed, and also participate actively in governance. And I think like the two teams that are talking here, like and also FRENS that is hosting this conversation, it's also participating quite a lot and engaging with the community. So like the thing here is like, how do we change? And I shared, I'm not sure if you guys saw my reply on the Commonwealth Forum, but I think we're like proposing a tree of solutions on the product side, on the protocol side, and also on the foundation delegation program. And on the product side, we're like doing all this UX research. As I mentioned before, like the concept of the name ordering or ranking effects. If you have like a ranking and on the top you have Orbital Apes, a lazy user will go and just like delegate to Orbital Apes, because that's kind of like, oh, I see that a lot of people are delegating to them, so like let me delegate to them, because like it doesn't impact me at all, right? But I think like in the future, from a product side, like I think opt-in recommendation systems are going to be the way forward with how do you engage with the validators. We want to eventually make the dashboard sort of like a social profile, where like you can see all the like the perks, and like the perks, like the description of each of the validators, like if they're like an eco validator, if they run multiple networks, if they run relayers, if they provide critical infrastructure for Evmos, etc. So like you can like actually engage with your validator in a more realistic way than just like going to a list and seeing which one is at the top and then delegate it to them. And we've been doing a lot of like UX research around this, and we've come with different solutions. And if you go here on the let me copy my my comment on the Commonwealth thread, where we like are completely changing the design of how you display all these things, like all the validators. And you can see, like, for example, their governance participation, the uptime, and later we'll have like a labeling system, sort of like to provide even more information to the user about their different validators. And then on the protocol side, there's like multiple solutions. I proposed one about the implementing the liquid staking module, which is one then like implementing some sort of like quadratic voting power implementation, so that every time that the rewards get distributed, there's like a square root of the voting power that get distributed to each of the validators, so that we can have like validators that actually have their own value proposition. And it's important to have like differentiation between all the validators, but also we don't want to overly increase the decentralization, right? So those are like two things that we're proposing. The other one is like foundation delegation program, and we are working on this. And the reason, and I stated this in the blog post, why we've been taking a lot of time is like we are also taking into consideration like off-chain contributions. We're not just looking at governance or like voting power or anything that's related on chain, but also looking at like, hey, maybe this validator is also like providing helpful value outside like community mods. They're also actively participating in these discussions, provide critical infrastructure, provide useful services like the NFT marketplace. I don't know, like some stuff like that we also need to consider. And also, of course, the testnet, if they're running a validator on the testnet, that's also hugely important because they're helping us stress test the network before we implement all the changes. So that's why it's been taking longer than expected, but and I will love to have a longer conversation with the entire validator set, so that we can have like a whole brainstorming session of how we can address this. But I think this is a first start.
Yeah, I think this could also be a topic for an upcoming live stream, actually. And I believe that this is like such a great idea, because you mentioned it. As of now, if you're like just lazy, then you just choose the first one. Especially for people who do not really, or who are like new to the space, they won't see like a huge difference. But to be fair, I think we also have to add this to this discussion. Evmos is still a very young project, a couple of months old, actually. And if we look at Bitcoin and how centralized the voting power was, or like how centralized Bitcoin was in general between 2009 and 2011, we also saw that the younger the project is, the more centralized it is, and then over time it gets more and more decentralized. So with these initiatives, you try to decentralize the voting power. And a question for you, Jacob, how do you view this? Do you think that this is actually also part of the discussion that Evmos will become more decentralized over time due to maturity?
So actually, in proof of stake, we haven't seen that happen every time. And it's a consistent problem. I'm going to cite a specific example, and I'll try to do it as rapidly as possible. In 2020, Justin's son bought Steemit, the company. And when he did that, he also purchased, I think, about a quarter of the token supply. And to make a long story short, there were a bunch of participants in Steem that didn't like that. I was one of them. And initially, I was a really big supporter of this project called Hive. But then Hive decided to remove from their not really their Genesis state, because Hive was a genuine fork. So it didn't have its own Genesis, technically speaking. But they removed a number of Steem users. And I wasn't a huge fan of that. However, when Hive removed Steem users, Steem then removed Hive users. And the way that Justin's son was able to do that was that basically he had enough stake to push around the witnesses. Witnesses are just validators, the infrastructure operators of chains that use Denler and Risgrathine consensus. This led to myself and actually Ricardo, he's one of the co-founders at Notional, and Tuan, and he's actually the person at Notional who runs our infrastructure operations suite called Cosmosia. And we built this thing called Blurt. The reason that we did it was that we didn't believe that either group was correct to go and nuke users. So Blurt was like the entire Steam user base. And at the time, I actually believe that we may have invented the snapshot airdrop. Or if we didn't invent it, we were definitely the first to execute it. It was a 1.4 million user airdrop. The chain has not been massively financially successful. We did not really we didn't seek to, for example, pay exchanges for listings. I think that if we had done that, that might have been quite different. And this is definitely a big thing that I feel like osmosis completely disrupted. Because if you list in the Cosmos ecosystem now, or if you launch a chain in the Cosmos ecosystem now, you can list on osmosis, SIF chain. I'm right that it's totally possible for a new chain to list on the different dexes on Evmos, right? Like they can make an IBC channel and actually list on it, similar to how they could do with JunoSwap.
Yeah. So like the main limitation right now, it's like we found a bug on IBC Go, so like the networks will need to run the latest IBC.
They need to be on V3.
V3.1.
3.0. Oh, this is a recent bug, huh?
Yeah.
I didn't know there was a 3.01. Okay.
We found it.
Nice. I don't know. This is a beautiful thing about Cosmos, actually. The software stack is advancing really quickly. So, like, compared to when we launched Blur, I mean, Osmosis changed the game for creating new layer 1 systems. After Osmosis, you had JunoSwap, you had SIF Chain, you had a number of others in the Cosmos ecosystem, like Crescent, that allow you to list your layer 1. And this is one of the really beautiful things about the IBC stack generally. Here's my point, though. Because Justin Sun had so much stake, he was able to nuke a whole bunch of accounts, and vice versa on Hive, unfortunately. And this is my dark concern. Orbital Apes, I gotta say to you guys, like, I read your document. I've spoken to you guys today. Actually, I don't think you're all about that. And if I were to make a single strategic recommendation, it might be to actually get rid of the Orbital Apes token, because I think that if it were to accrue value, then it's possible that the OAV token, the one that you describe as like giving access to that shop and being kind of like for delegator loyalty, that plays into my doomsday scenario. And I hope everybody does not mind. I'll take a second to sort of walk through that doomsday scenario.
Yeah, maybe we can do this like towards the end of this live stream, because because I really want to give this word also over to Orbital Apes. So we definitely see your concerns here, Jacob. So but Orbital Apes, we saw some initiatives to also counterfight this. So you were very proactive, because all of a sudden you were the #1 validator on Evmos. So could you talk a little bit about how you realized this problem, or recognized this problem, better said, and what you did, because there were some cool initiatives. So maybe you could talk about this as well.
Yeah, so I think I'll pass over to Control-Alt-Ape or code later, but I just wanted to state that we realized the centralization problem far before the Twitter drama started, I guess. We were actually talking to the Evmos Foundation on the Evmos team in Telegram, in a Telegram we have with them, before all of this started, and we were looking into ways we can help smaller validators and help minimize the impact we were having on governance. So yeah, we actually recognized the problem ourselves before getting attacked on Twitter, I guess. We were trying to look into solutions for it for a while. And yeah, we've come up with a bunch of different ideas and initiatives to actually counter this problem.
Yeah, and you also like promoted other validators. I also saw this on Twitter, so this was very cool to see. And you also engaged a lot with other validators. So big shout out for that. And I also want to ask you now, Federico, because you described this problem earlier that you as a validator, you have to do something in order to get recognized in this endless list. So how do you see this competition in the future? Because I think we won't see a staking industry where just validators have on Twitter account, they tweet here and there, and now they're in the game. So how do you think this will change over time, or will we basically stick at that stage?
I think so. Like for a long time, the main problem was, and the main problem I had with validators was there wasn't like a clear value proposition, or like from that would distinguish one validator from the other. Like from a user's point of view, it was always like a commodity based on which validator had lower commission, and that's why we had that problem. So it's like the problem that we had on the Cosmos Hub for a long time. I don't know if you remember, Jacob, back when you were at Tendermint, that we had that same problem with actually Sunny, that was running a validator with 0% commission.
As a troll, that was kind of hilarious. But yeah.
Like users would go like, oh, this one has 0% commission. For me, like I get all the commission from them, and like, yeah. So like, the main thing here is like, how do we create engagement, or how do we allow the user to directly engage with these validators? And I think the way that we can do this is by providing more information of how the validators contribute to the network, and maybe not to just Evmos, but to the entire interchain ecosystem. And I think that has been, like, in my personal opinion, a design mistake, or like a product mistake from a lot of not only the block explorers but wallets, etc. Because when you go to Kepler and you go to the staking view, like you see the same problem. You see this list of validators that are sorted by voting power, and no one has been able to tackle this from a holistic point of view, from a product point of view, from like interacting with the users, looking at it from a user experience point of view. But also, like the main approach has been, okay, let's talk to the foundation, and like maybe the ICF will fix it with their delegation program, right, Jacob? And delegate to the lower tier validators who are not participating in governance, or are like missing all the blocks. And then there's another discussion of like what the delegation program doesn't have any accountability on the validators that they're delegating to. And so it's a problem that is like, it has many variables. That's what I'm trying to convey here. And we're trying, like the core team has been trying to tackle it from like this holistic point of view. And we have our senior designer working on it, and is working on the new designs that I shared on this Commonwealth discussion. Yeah, so that's how we are approaching it.
Follow-up question, just very quickly, just one follow-up question here, because I like what you said, Federico, and I also like this idea that you are proposing in Commonwealth nowadays. But I think we are all on one page if we say we are approaching mass adoption here. And even if we provide new information, much more information, and we change the systems here and there, let's say if really like the noobs enter the space that are not in crypto yet, like let's say my mom, and she wants to enter staking. Even if we provide all this information to her, she will say, okay, but what can I do with that? So do you actually think that in order to really that in order that the staking industry really becomes mass adopted and globally used, do you think that there's like also the part that the validator has to do, so like marketing, community engagement, etc., etc.? Do you think that this is in the end much stronger than just providing a set of data and information?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you've seen the user interface from Optimism. how they engage, and like, oh, let me click at the different values that you, and you see like different labels, and like, oh, eco-friendly or high security or like governance, participation, like and so on. So you go into this user experience where you basically, they say like, choose a delegate that shares your values, and here a delegate is the same as a validator. And so they have like interests like accessibility, DAOs, or like DeFi. They build developer tools. They're like in gaming, NFTs, privacy. They write, or they have a social impact. So like you choose each of them, and you can like, and you get a selected list of validators that basically match your interests. And I think that's a great way of like aligning values with the validators in the long term. And the other thing is like, that Jacob has been pointing out a lot, and like there has been also a lot of discussions lately of like, okay, you already delegated, like, take the state now, right? What happens if one of the validators that you delegated your or staked your tokens suddenly starts losing all the, like, missing all the blocks, or like doesn't participate anymore in governance, or like even like gets jailed or double signs or anything? Like, how do you as a user know that this is happening if you're like a passive staker? Like, and so like adding sort of like a notification layer on top is also a way for you as a user to kind of like engage more with these validators. Like ideally you should have like a view where you have like notifications, or your validators like lost the uptime drop from 100% to 20% or something like that, so that you can take an action based on that information. And that is not surfaced to end users. We've been doing a lot of work in the protocol side, but we are not actually doing anything to make the like non-crypto native users understand like the implications of like how, like, for example, uptime works, or like these governance participation, or like, so that they can make informed decisions with their staking tokens.
Jacob, I think you wanted to say something about this as well.
Yeah. Okay. So now we're at the complicated and challenging part, I think. Because for one thing, Orbital Apes team, first of all, I actually don't see anything directly wrong with what you're doing. Secondly, I do think that your techniques could be weaponized. I'm not saying that you're weaponizing them, by the way. Actually, it's pretty clear to me at this stage that you're not. And thirdly, like, yeah, this definitely is a design question. It definitely has a lot to do with being in contact with the users, with the user community, and providing people with the correct information. And unfortunately, you know, we have seen cases where validators have not provided people with accurate information, or have made claims that are incorrect, with the worst case, of course, being the recent fire stake incident. I want to like dive briefly into a nightmare scenario, which is sort of like, okay, in other blockchain ecosystems, I mean, other than Cosmos, where proof of stake is used, often kickbacks are like de rigueur. They're normal. And validators, or sometimes they're called witnesses in the Graphene series of chains where I have a pretty good deal of experience, they kind of specialize in the construction of kickbacks. If I were to have a thought on like how to make Cosmos chains safer, it would be like, what you'd want to ban specifically is incentives to delegators that don't exist in the native protocol. So for you guys, like that would be probably the OAV token. But another thing that I want to say is you guys have accomplished something enormous. You know, like really the way that consensus works is not Orbital Apes' fault. And the way that rewards are distributed that's also not Orbital Apes' fault. The trouble is the closer you get to 33%, closer you get to being able to actually stop the chain. And my concern surrounds two numbers. So there's 33% or 1/3, and then 66% or 2/3. If there were a number of validators who were potentially colluding, I described a scenario on Reddit where like that collusion could lead to, and this would work. It would work for sure. So Evmos, I know, is pursuing listings on centralized exchanges and also has listings on decentralized exchanges throughout Cosmos. Some of those allow for shorting. Some of the centralized exchanges, some of the decentralized exchanges. And if they don't allow for shorting today, well, they will in the future. In fact, I think short positions are a great thing. Like I would want them to offer shorts. Trouble is, if you can assemble 1/3 of vote power, build short positions. By the way, this is not really easy to detect. Nobody would necessarily know it's you. And then stop the chain. You profit massively. The community, and then by the way, I'm not talking about Orbital Apes. Let's say the conspirators, right? The conspirators profit massively. The community loses massively. And that's really it, right? Also, if the conspirators just disappear, it's really hard to restart the chain too, because it's missing 1/3 of its vote power. You can do it. It might, require like another Genesis or something, and you don't really want to go there. So that's the nightmare scenario. One of the solutions to that is definitely designed, though. I actually really like the way that Fede is describing how we can solve it, because for whatever reason, there hasn't been a lot of exploration of design for like staking interfaces and stuff. And actually, validators are like strikingly different in how they operate. Guys, Orbital Apes, I never would have had your idea. I never would have thought of that, okay? In terms of like all of the things that you've done to build your brand, that is not even for a second how Notional would have built its brand. And that's not an attack on you, actually, like, good work. These are legitimately fresh thoughts. And while I did not get a chance to do a true deep dive into your product, I don't really think that you're like bribing users. If you want to get rid of the ability of anybody to claim that, I'd say drop the OAV token, which is given out for making a delegation. About distributing rewards for your validator, I think, and please, anybody jump in, correct me if you feel I'm wrong. Like, look, on a 5-year timeline, I would like to see Notional doing something like that, okay? There are legal hurdles. There are a million hurdles. But what I mean is, on a 5-year timeline, I'm hoping that Notional is a publicly traded company that, has a token, which is a security, or maybe 5 years later, we have fixed this whole, in my opinion, very stupid distinction between like token and security and money and blockchain, right? Because they're sort of all forms of the same thing. They're like assets that have some sort of value, and that those people can earn from our validator set. But we're way far away from that, right? Currently, You know, Notional is a Vietnamese company that operates validators, and shortly that Vietnamese company will be owned by a Singaporean company. So I guess what I mean to say here is, one, Fede, I think you've got the right idea in terms of like, if we improve design, we can do a number of things to soften the blow of this issue. And then two, to Orbital Apes, I guess I would say, you guys are not what scares me. And maybe that is what makes your success so impressive. I thought that you guys were directly giving kickbacks. Maybe OAV is a kickback. Please don't sweep the floor on it. Because, like, what I mean is, if you guys were to back a marketplace in an OAV, then I would definitely, I'd come at you real hard. Reason being that at that point, you'd be circumventing the minimum commission policy, right? So you wouldn't want to do that, please. You may wish to drop the OAV token, but overall, like, guys, number one on a chain like Evmos, just congratulations for me. I checked out your other contributions. They're legit.
Jacob, on this topic, like, first of all, thanks for the congratulations. We really made an effort for all of this. But also, part of why we're here is because we want to keep operating with our current business model. So OEV is part of the ecosystem we've built. So I want to find like a balance of how, like, where would you draw the line? Because there's certain options we have for OEV. One of them is making it non-tradable. So it would still come to the users, but they would only, like, actually only be able to use it in the OAV store. Right now it's permissionless. They can do anything they want, as we believe crypto should be, but we do have the resources to make it, to apply some limits to the token. Another thing, like, if the core issue is the voting power, something else we can do is, for example, if we define a scary percentage somewhere where if our validator reaches that size, it would create a definite threat for the chain. So, for example, let's say we establish 15% voting power as a threshold. We could stop the issuance of OEV at that point, or anything that the community decides. So if our validator is being pushed towards those levels, we completely stop the program until we lower our percentage, which will happen because people won't receive any benefit. And that's how we maintain a balance. Like, this is just something I thought of right now, haven't discussed it with the team, but I see it as a potential solution. Like, I'm trying to find ways of controlling this to prevent it from becoming an issue, but still for us being able to operate the way we do.
So there are like, if we set up a threshold, there are like multiple solutions that we can do in order to ensure that there's like further decentralization that is like actually automatic, and you don't need to do anything but like change it. For example, like if you change the withdrawal address from your from like your validator to the address that distributes the tokens to the rest of the validators and the entire delegators, which is a fee module, the fee collector module account, and it's linked on the Evmos documentation. So if you change that withdrawal address, it will automatically distribute your rewards to the entire validator set and to the delegators. So that's like, if you want to act in good faith and you get to a certain point, you can do that, or you can define like the withdrawal address from your community, like from the tokens rewards to the community pool. That's another option, for example.
That's a brand new use of a module account.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have thought of that.
We actually do something like that, but not automatic. Like, we take all the profits from the minting. We take, well, most of the profits, like 90% of the profits of the minting, all of the profits from the marketplace, and the 50% rewards that we keep, and we delegate that to smaller validators. I think up to right now we have up to 280,000 Evmos delegated to smaller validators. For example, in the last community call, Pablo, which is a guy that I've been hearing speak in that community call for a long time, he's always there. He mentioned that he was waiting for the testnet rewards because he's struggling to keep his sorry, his validator in the top 50%, in the top 150 active set. So as soon as that call ended, I reached out to him and I said, thank you for being such an active member. You've been in every community call. You always speak up. We're sorry that the testnet rewards are not here yet. Let us know how we can help. We asked him for the name of his validator, the address of his validator, and we right away staked a considerable amount to help him stay in the active set. And not just to him, we have like over 10 or a lot more validators were actively helping in that way.
That's key
So there's
engagement,
like-
if you ask me.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say that we at Notional, like we recruit validators to different chains, and I like that. I'm happy that you guys do that. We have been lucky enough to acquire significant stake on several chains. There are several chains where we can kind of go like, you're a validator, and we do that when people are great.
Yeah, I think what I really love about this discussion so far is that we also come up with a solution at this point. So I'm very excited to see what we will see in the future of that. I think there have been some very good ideas. So, for example, to basically limit the issuance of OLV when we reach certain voting power levels. But I want to go back to this, to the initial discussion more or less, to like basically focus on the problem again. So, I mean, we at Friends, we also did an airdrop, like the diffusion airdrop, but it also comes not out of nowhere. So, for example, you guys, you have built like an NFT marketplace, you're designing NFT, so you provide a lot of value, and therefore we have like an amazing NFT culture on Evmos. Because of you guys, we helped diffusion, like the first AMM on Evmos. So my question now is, generally, because Jacob, you were like heavily against this, should validator-specific airdrops be allowed at all as a form, let's say, for marketing? So I would love to hear your opinion, and then maybe Federico's, because you're like actively working on Evmos.
Sure. Okay. My opinion is no, but it may not apply to these apes here. But it might apply to the apes. It really kind of depends on that OAV token and how they treat it. Guys, in working on Craft Economy, I built out these systems, okay? And actually, like, you know, I helped for a number of other teams in our customer Chandra Station. And by the way, I'm certain we didn't break any established rules, okay? At the same time, I began to become concerned. When did I begin to become concerned? Prop 69 on the hub. I actually don't think that Jay had much influence over Prop 69, although a lot of people like were able to say that occurred. I think that the majority of validators who voted no or no with veto did that in conscience, and mainly around the resource consumption of Cosmwasm. I know that was the case in my case, but you know what sucked from my perspective was people actually saying, well, no, you didn't know with veto, like to pump your validator or whatever. I was a no, and I didn't know with veto because of the veto text, which just, that's not what no with veto does, so it should not have said that. To draw to a close though, I worry about stuff like stealing the entire community fund of a chain, or otherwise breaking consensus, say like stopping a chain at 1/3, or modifying state at 2/3. And I'm gonna let Fede hop in, but so like generally speaking, airdrops to support a specific validator, I'm against them.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think it's a double-edged sword. So I think the OIV token doesn't impose any, like in my view, in my professional opinion, doesn't impose like a threat to the entire like security of the network. But if the same practice is implemented by someone who is like malicious in some way, that could be like my worry. And I think that I agree with Jacob and the entire Notional team that we should be like very like we should institute some like sort of like guidelines of what is actually okay with the entire Evmos community versus what we think it's like not made in good faith. Because the Orbital Apes teams, especially they did the OIV token like in good faith for their OIV store. But imagine if someone starts doing the same thing, but with like a more like malicious purpose of like trying to get them more and more and more network dominance, so to say. So yeah, that's kind of like my opinion. I think like we should discuss this internally with the team and like kind of like define like what is actually, or like we should define utility for the token, or we should define like whether or not the community is okay, or like some sort of like rule set for how do we evaluate these different tokens. And I think like this should also take into consideration how in the future like liquid staking will come into play on Evmos. For example, like every single validator will have its own token as the share of the voting power they have. So yeah, like I think we should create some sort of like guidelines. But in this particular case, we like I don't think it's like a bad thing. But I appreciate the open discussion that the Orbital Apes had, and like and also especially receiving constructive feedback. And it would be personally a huge red flag if like the Orbital Apes didn't receive or like was like very defensive towards any like comments regarding the OIV token. So like I applaud their team for their openness and also for their the willingness to discuss these issues with the entire community.
I wanna echo that, guys. Like this was looking to be a very spicy conversation, and the more I looked into it, actually, look, a #1 validator slot is freaking awesome. You guys knocked it out of the park here, and I don't see anything sketchy in your case. I feel like same as Fede, like we should try to create some policies around what is or isn't sketchy. But I really want to thank you guys, because I don't think this was a low risk conversation for you, and I appreciate your participation tons.
No, absolutely, Jacob and Fede. And right now, like Evmos is our home, so we want to try to maybe collaborate with these regulations, guidelines. We are here right now. We did this so we can help maybe provide feedback on how to safely implement this sort of rewards. I think if we draft like some proper guidelines to make this clear, we can also make some modifications in how we operate. Because as of now, of course, our intentions were good. So we always saw this as a reward, not as a threat for the chain. But if people want to give their feedback and help us modify how we operate, then we're more than glad to do it. Our aim is to continue growing in Evmos, and if we grow alongside the community, then it's much better. We can continue to get more involved with other validators so they get to know our team, get to know our capabilities, so there's no question about our intentions. I feel like the more we get to know other people validating in this chain, they will get to know our character, and this can be intentions are, and you can have a like full transparency on everything we plan on doing.
I want to ask one more thing, one question to Federico, because Jacob mentioned this drama around governance proposal 69. because we were talking about a governance proposal here and not about a validator-specific airdrop. So we, for example, had the diff airdrop, and it was like also somewhat marketing. But what this governance proposal was more or less about vote no or vote no with veto, and you get money for that. So is there actually the possibility, like as a possible solution from a noob here, to say, okay, as soon as we see like validators, like malicious validators, trying to bribe votes in during a governance proposal, that this is like this is a red flag and this would lead to slashing, while just incentivizing delegations is a different topic, so that you can say, okay, and if the voting share is getting too powerful because more and more people are delegating to this validator, that we then can adjust this separately, so that we basically talk about two different cases here. So the one trying to bribe someone for voting yes or no, and the other one to say, okay, we are adjusting like voting power afterwards manually.
Yeah, so so we're trying to address this from like an observability point of view. We just started working with our DevOps engineer to like implement like additional like metrics and observability using Grafana and other tools, Prometheus, so that we can like flag all these behaviors. And I think it's also in the foundation's mandate to, if this happens, like if there's like bribe, like we can take action, whatever it is. Like for the main thing here is transparency, like making these things transparency and like having the community also engage with all these decisions. But I think it will have to be taken case by case, depending on the outcome as well, and like in the sort of like misbehavior. I know, Jacob, you were also proposing some like validator slashing. I think it's not a bad idea, but it needs to be tied with a higher quorum requirement.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and right now, I mean, I definitely don't have a policy put together.
Yeah, and this is
maybe my fear is like I won't have a policy when the first incident happens. But yeah.
Yeah, I think like something like that could be one option, but then the other thing would be like the foundation. We have a policy of like abstaining on governance proposals, and we'll have like a policy of abstaining on proposals and like having each of the validators take their own decisions. But if there is something that clearly goes against the mandate of the Evmos chains and the Evmos chain and the Evmos community, also the foundation could take part into the decision-making process. Yeah.
I think this live stream gets longer and longer, so I want to encourage everybody who has a question now to type this question into the chat, because we will hop into the Q&A very shortly. So if you have a question for Orbital Apes, Federico, or Jacob, please go ahead with it. But to basically wrap things a little bit up, so we talked about decentralization in Evmos, about centralized voting power, etc. So what are the upcoming strategies for you, Federico, to basically keep Evmos as decentralized as possible? And maybe Jacob and Orbital Apes, maybe you want to share some solutions or some approaches as well.
On our side, I think we've given like what are our resources, what are our intentions on how to move forward. We're in contact with all of you guys. You know how to reach us. So after this stream, after all this discussion we've had, we're going to continue working with you guys to find a proper solution. I don't think it's something we can find out in a live stream, but if we continue talking and sharing ideas, then we're going to find a solution for sure. Like, it's all of us working together, we can find balance. So just like, I want to let you know that our DMs are always open. You can count on us on contributing to whatever decision the chain and the community wants to do. And let's keep in touch for that so we can find the proper solution for this.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to like just ask people and community and validators in general. Like, if you talk to us, we are super open. We are generally available, and we are actually good people. We're cool people. So like, if you have doubts, if you have complaints, if you want us to change something, approach us directly. Don't go and do some publicly shaming and public tweets about what's going on, trying to get some attention from social media. Just come to us, tell us what you're thinking, and we will talk to you in a very nice way, and we will try to find some middle ground in the conversation. So yeah, just wanted to say, like, we're open to talk, and we'd rather talk to you face to face or talk to you in a public forum, rather than engage in these Twitter war like conversations we've been having for the past weeks, which we were a bit disappointed from some people that didn't reach out to us directly.
Gotcha. Hey, what do you think about Reddit for these types of conversations? Because like, when I was trying to advocate for different policies on the hub, Twitter failed, right? What I mean is the conversation was just too damn complex for Twitter. But I do like to have the conversations in public as much as possible. So like, I'm just curious how you feel about, the choice of communications platform.
I feel like Reddit was a great choice. For sure, it's incredibly difficult to express a point on Twitter. The response I wrote to you was around 4,000 words, so that's something I just couldn't fit in Twitter. So Reddit is perfect. Like, I think I was able to explain our full scope of the project. So if we continue conversation in that same thread, or if we want to create other threads, I think Reddit is perfect because we can truly elaborate on our points. Twitter is too limited and it won't be taken seriously by most. There's like, everyone can access that. It's going to be on their feed, so they may give some impulsive opinions, which doesn't necessarily help the conversation. So I think Reddit, where you have to think through what you're saying, is much better than just being impulsive and tweeting.
Awesome. I'll try to use Reddit more and more because I actually think that it was really, look, somebody on Telegram was like, dude, like, Twitter sucks, and that's part of the problem in your communication about the issues on the hub. And I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, like, I use Twitter for everything, but like, do you have another suggestion? They were like, Reddit, obviously. And I was like, okay. It went great. And so I'll probably be trending more toward Reddit just because you do get more space. Conversations are a little more clearly threaded.
Also, Commonwealth is a pretty good tool. Like, whenever we're talking about a true discussion that will affect the chain, then Commonwealth is perfect, because also Federico and the team is pushing strongly for Commonwealth. So we can definitely use that as well.
Yeah, for governance related discussions, yes. I think they're also like topic for general discussion.
Yeah, really like in which direction this goes. I think also Twitter is also so overloaded sometimes. So I think Commonwealth and Reddit gives this like a little bit more structure. But now let's hop into the Q&A. And the first question is by Sam X. Why not just set a voting power limit, like once a validator reaches X delegations, their voting power stops increasing, or maybe decay a validator's voting power after X number of delegations? So maybe, Federico, you want to pick up this question?
I mean, this is a good idea, but the main limitation is that you can easily bypass it by spinning up a new validator and then redelegating. And so you have like two validator instances, and then you can shut down the network if you shut down the two nodes. So that's a main limitation. So it's like, it's super easy to implement, but you can easily bypass it. That's a main thing.
I see. Yeah, let us continue with another question here. What about payment plans for NFTs? Small-time investors want to get in, but may not have enough to buy outright. This would definitely bring new people into the space. So maybe Orbital Apes, maybe you want to pick up this question.
Yeah, so this, like, it's not going to happen with every collection, but the way we have built the Orbital Apes actually has a system that self-regulates. So, for example, every NFT in our collection has the same access to utility. So it doesn't matter the rarity or the price of the NFT, everyone will receive the same share. So our floor price at some points could be lower than the mint price. So people could just go to secondary market and mint and buy one of those cheaper apes, and they will get access to the same benefits. So it kind of self-regulates. As the floor drops, people will see more value because the return on their investment is going to be higher relative to the price they pay. So the floor will continue to go up, and this will happen automatically, but this is something specific to our collection. And I think payment plans for NFTs will depend on each team, so it's not something easily implementable by everyone. On our case, it works because of how we created the business model behind it and the tokenomics, but it's not something anyone can just apply.
You could also pay in installments, I guess, like on-chain installments. That could be another option.
So what to add on to what Cos said, not only the floor of minted apes goes up and down, and sometimes people can enter the project at different rates, but also unminted apes are still generating rewards or earning rewards from the validator. So as it takes as days pass, an unminted ape contains more rewards each day. So it means that if right now, if you pay 60 Evmos for an ape, you're actually paying 59 or 58 for point something, because that ape already comes with rewards, which could be seen as a discount.
I guess another thing with payment plans for NFTs, you would have to change the NFT standard to be able to revoke ownership of an NFT if those payment plans are not met. So that might cause some controversy over the whole, I guess, ownership of NFTs.
I see. Another question for you, Orbital Apes, asked by Basil Nasser. So what I don't understand is that, oh, what second? Here, this one. No, wait one. Here. So no, it was the right one. So what I don't understand is that you guys told people that you will airdrop OAV, but then OAV has no value. So just that the people understand this right now. So OAV does not have like a big utility except purchasing additional features in your store, like, I don't know, a McDonald's hat or whatever.
Yeah. So if you go through all of our posts on social media, we've been very vocal and clear about the intentions of OAV. It's a token meant to be used on our store. The value of it is that it gives you access to collectibles, to further ways to engaging with the brand. So it certainly has value. We have, like, of course, it's an ERC20, so it can be treated as any other coin. So people are free to create a liquidity pool, but our team has never promoted it as a financial product. We have never provided liquidity. We have never traded the token. We only use it for its intended purpose. So it depends on the value you assign to it. If you want to delegate to us, it's because you believe in the brand, you want to be engaged with the ecosystem, but it's not, we're not forcing anyone to delegate to us. If you don't feel it has value, then you shouldn't delegate to us. It's not a requirement. You can go choose to support someone that provides value to the chain in other ways, like EcoStake, for example. They created a tool for restaking. You can stake to Notional.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Very local. So
Yeah, we wanna
your choice.
we wanna add that to the dashboard so that you have automatic redelegation, like restaking on out of staking.
We're waiting for the in protocol, like automatic restake features. Those are going to be added to the Cosmos SDK at some point soonish. Probably not soon enough, but That's actually at Notional. That's been our call. I just wanted to say real quick to the gentleman who says, "Oh, well, it has no value." Well, pretty much means that the value of the OAV token is the same as like Bitcoin or ETH, which is to say that it's completely determined by the market. I'd feel a certain and very negative way if I were to see them market making it, you know, because look, you can give one of these tokens a price. You totally can. And we should not, I wouldn't want to ignore that reality, right? Another concern that I had with some of the NFT-based validators, like, well, you can sweep the floor, and now you've created a defined price for your NFT. But frankly, like, crypto works on, well, scarce asset, let the market define the price. So fair game, I guess, which is cool.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, regarding OAV, since the start of the token, we've always recommended that our users do not invest in it, because it is, like, as a financial investment, it's just meant to be a fun way to kind of interact with our ecosystem, because the supply does increase every month. We keep airdropping it. It's not meant to be a monetary value. Like, we would never suggest someone to buy this and hope they hit a 10x or 100x, but just use it for what it is and have fun with it and use it in our store. But yeah, we'll never recommend it as a financial investment.
Yeah, I think that's a very good conclusion of it. And again, this live stream is getting longer and longer. If you want to follow Notional Labs, you can do so. You can find the link to the Twitter profile in the description below. Same thing for Orbital Apes, Evmos, and Federico's personal Twitter handle. You can all find this in the description below. So go check them out, engage with the community. And with that being said, thank you guys for attending the show. And also thanks to you guys for watching. And I hope I see you soon on the show.
Everyone, thank you.
Very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, guys. See you.
Catch you guys later, and thanks a ton.
Bye.